Yeah, so apparently I can't help myself, and I went back into Facebook, the groups, and I found another weird one. And this one went all over the place, so I figured I'll just give you chronologically what happened, and you can make your own decision because I was way off for most of it. So let's get into it. This is in a filmmaking group, but I'm not gonna out whoever this was, just because that's not fair. So let's just look at it. It says, "Buyer beware. With great disappointment, I have to leave this review working with the person. I hired him as videographer for a road trip. I'll start by saying that during the trip, absolutely talented and reliable. Unfortunately, all that disappeared the moment I paid for the remainder of the project, with one video left to be edited. He disappeared and ghosted me for 2+ weeks, provided no updates, no communication, and prioritized other newer gigs ahead of my fully paid job. Still, I haven't been able to get on the phone with him and receive my deliverables. Yes, I'm very aware of not paying vendors until the job is done, but in good faith for a hard worker, I made an exception and unfortunately ended up in this difficult position. I caution anyone looking at a videographer to withhold all payments until a project is 100% done. As for working with this person, you get a great videographer, but that may disappear on you." So a few things to unpack there. This person hired this videographer for a bunch of things, it seems like, and the person did a good job shooting it, but then sending it out afterwards, sending the edit out afterwards, not so much. It seems to me that the person the hiring person paid for the whole project already, right? Did I read that right? And they're saying don't do that. In my color grading business, I have a contract for this kind of reason, and almost always it's half up front, half upon final delivery. There's different. I have different. Sometimes it's 25% up front, 25% for a checkpoint, 25% for a checkpoint, 25% for delivery. If it's something I've got a really bad feeling about, all of it's up front. And usually in my contract, I have some sort of terms about refunds or something. Yeah, I'm flexible on refunds, but usually if it's a situation where they want all their money back, my time is worth something, so they're not going to get all of it. So that's just what it is. Yeah. So, but it sounds like they shot it and they did a good job, and then they just disappeared on the edit, which is part of the reason why I don't like to edit. I don't like to be involved in editing projects for clients because, on one side, there's never a way to explain to a client how much work and how much time and how much effort is involved, and only some of that gets billed. And on the other side, clients will ask for the world, even if you give them really, really specific contracts. And so I tend to try to suss out in pre-conversations before we drop a contract what kind of client I'm working with, and if it's somebody who's just going to keep asking and they're also going to keep not be willing to pay for stuff, I usually just peace out because it's not worth it. It just kind of seems like most of the time the best clients are both the high paying ones, and they don't care how you do it, that you just do it. It's the ones that don't want to pay for anything, that also have a million questions and a million little adjustments, that they're not being serious and it's not worth your time. And this is from experience because I've had it happen to me a bunch, as does everybody. So my take right now is, maybe this person, there's got to be an explanation for why this videographer disappeared, because they did the first hard part, which is shooting it. So the other hard part is getting the edit done, but I don't know. Next up, 2 weeks isn't very long for an editing standpoint. Yeah, I agree. Especially if they're a production company and they have a lot of stuff. Usually it's in contracts. Usually you have checkpoints. I have checkpoints in my contracts for that reason. Because once I start color grading, I know how long it's going to take based on our conversations and our contract. And if I can't satisfy it, I let the client know, and we either change the contract or I give them something else in return of basically breaking my own contract. That's how I deal with it. Other people deal with it differently. The original poster said he was turning all around prior, similar length, 3 minutes videos. He doesn't pick up calls, respond to text. Something's definitely up, and changed from initially engagement. Wait, so how many did he turn in? With one video left to be edited. So he did all of it, and then he disappeared. I'm very confused. If he's done, I don't know how many videos they did, but let's say 75% of the work, and then the very last video he just disappeared. Something's up. Yeah. Anyway, I did read this, so I know the answer, but my knee-jerk reaction when I read it the first time is something's off. Like, something must have happened to this person, because it'd be really weird to scam somebody where you do 75% of the work and then you just don't do the other 25%, even though it's the same amount of trouble and work as you've already done. That's not a scam territory. That's just like a family crisis or something, or I don't know, lost the footage maybe. I don't know. Author says he's turning it all around within 48 hours. Good for him, but also I don't promise anything inside of several days because that's insane. What if something happens? If I have 40 hours, no, let's say I have 5 hours of color grading, I will not promise next day. I will probably not promise 2 days, because yes, it's 5 hours of sitting down on my ass working, but it also is 5 hours that I have to dedicate to it. And do I really have 5 hours of work that I can do amongst everything else? So I just, life gets in the way. I'm not gonna promise five hour job a next day turnaround. That's insane. That means something else has to give, and that's not good. Anyway, this is absurd. Yes, it is, and yes, you can respond in that time too. Yeah, it sucks that the guy's not being communicative, but also, like, the fact that his behavior changed and they're not talking about the contract, that's what I'm confused about. Because, yeah, if I again, in the 5 hours of work thing, if I have 5 hours in front of me and I'm just ready to do it, I might knock it out and send it over to them and just say, hey, I had time. But it's sort of understood and implied that this, my contract says how many days for a reason. Like, yes, it just happened. I happen to go fast this time, but that's not a normal thing. And let's just not get into the habit of me doing that because it was just a fluke, Next person says maybe he has only one project in the pipeline, but not that. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. He seems like he's overbooked. And if he's not returning calls, again, it's either a family emergency or the poster is, for lack of a better word, annoying. I've had that happen. I've been in the middle of projects where I'm usually pretty clear about it for customer service reasons, that I'm like, hey, I here's my communication. I'll get this to you. If you continue to ask me the same thing, I will update you at this time. I'm probably not going to be able to respond because I'm going to be asleep or traveling or family time. There's real reasons. Even though a text is pretty informal, if I'm doing shit, I'm probably not thinking about your shit. And that's I would expect the same from you, if that makes sense. Anyway, moving on. With good businessmen, you should be paid out before any work is started. I don't begin editing until I'm paid in full. Contracts are important. Sorry this happens, but as a videographer, I don't believe in not being paid until the job is done. Contract ensure work pay is done. But as for your task, I hope you get your work. Communication is the key to a successful relationship in business and in life in general. Yeah, it's from a client standpoint, I understand why you would want to hold out on payment until after you get your thing. But that's under the expectation that you're going to get your thing. From a salesperson, you got to pay me at least half, or at least whatever we agreed on ahead of time, because I have resources, I have time, I have things. This starts the process. I usually don't I expect everything ahead of time unless it's really sketchy and I just don't trust the person, because if it's that situation, if they don't pay me, I know I don't have to start. But I got to be paid something, with the expectation that we both understand that once it's done, the other half of the payment comes. And a lot of times, especially in filmmaking, especially in like advertising and stuff, the other check doesn't show up. A lot of people do what's called net 30, which is 30 days after the job is complete. That's how you get screwed as a person doing labor. It's just is what it is, which is why in my contracts it says I'm not going to give you the final colored files until you send me the final check. Then I will send it over. I'm not holding it hostage. I'm saying I have it, but now that the transaction needs to end, you got to put the money in, and I give you exactly what you want, and we're both happy, and then the contract ends. That's how I set up my stuff for this kind of situation. But it also kind of sounds like this guy understands that he's not gonna. Well, no, he already got paid. So I see what the person is saying. Where we paid him, why isn't he doing this? Well, that was on you for paying him the whole thing. And it sounds like you're not. I'm not hearing contracts. This person brings up contracts. Contracts are a big deal. Contracts are enforceable. Anyway, none of this matters when dudes straight up ghost you after you pay them. Did he ghost? He turned in all the videos but one. Sounds like this guy didn't ghost until something happened, but maybe I'm giving him too much credit. It does, because clients don't pay after they receive their work too. Business is business. Same goes for any industry. Do your research. Not everyone ghosts. Vet the people you spend your money on. Not saying this person specifically, but some of us do this for a living, day to day, and there's clients who don't pay the final payment. If, let's say, $200 after they got their product, $200 goes a long way for someone who depends on that. I see what this is saying. Continuing on. When contracts are in play, situations change. We either handle in court and with court fees, or we handle it in the street with street fees. Your choice. I prefer business and contracts for a reason. I left the streets for a reason. Yeah, I agree with this person. This person is very reasonable. I totally agree with what they're saying. What timeline does your contract specify for deliverables? The person did not answer. If this is true, then admin should kick this guy out. That is not cool. I disagree. No videographer should do all the work with no money down. That's just asking to be screwed. Sorry this happened, but 2-week turnaround is not a long time. What does your contract state? This is where the professionals intervene and say, did you have a contract? Did you drop a contract? A handshake contract is not trustworthy for anybody. Minimum, I send an email and say, hey, this is what we talked about. This is what we agreed on. Send me an email back saying yes if we still agree on this. That's the minimum kind of contract that I do with anybody for pretty much anything that requires any amount of work, especially creative work, because a handshake deal, it will kill you. This happens a lot with short films that I work on, where it's a handshake deal and people are scared of paperwork and somebody gets screwed, and it's usually not the people making the movie. So he didn't say no money down for all work. He said the rest of the work was not finished when he paid the remaining balance, meaning it was probably set up with payments in increments, which I would feel comfortable doing myself. Yeah, okay. I don't agree. I don't think that's what happened, but that's fine. I caution anyone looking at it. Says the quote, to withhold payments until the project is 100% done. As for working with you, unless you specified a fast turnaround and paid for that, then statement is valid. That doesn't seem specified here. Yeah, I get contracts. Sorry you're dealing with this. As an editor, I understand the importance of making sure clients know you're there for them while also ensuring they don't take your work without paying you. I watermark everything until 100% payment comes in. That way, it's as simple as re-exporting without the watermark, which is hardly any work at all. Yep, that's what I do. Yep, except I don't watermark it. I give them an incredibly low-res file that they can't use. And if I really don't trust them, I'll watermark it. Or I'll do something else to the color that they don't necessarily notice, but will break whatever they're doing. That's not true. I would watermark it now. Like I've done that in the past for sketchy shit. I will watermark something that I really don't trust, and I just won't send a full high res file for somebody I kind of trust, if that makes sense. But also, I make a point before the contract is drawn up to sit with these people and consult with them and try to get an understanding of not only what they want, but how they're working. Because if they're working sketchy, life's too short. Life's too short. Yeah. 2 weeks. 2 weeks would be a really fast turnaround time unless it was communicated in your contract. I wouldn't go bashing the videographer. It's wedding season and the industry is busy this time of year. That's true. That's true. It just March as of today. Also, it's totally industry standard for the project to be paid in full prior to even filming. Nobody I know would take the final payment after delivering the final video. This person is more of a professional than I am, I guess. I agree though, and if they're talking about wedding stuff, yeah, you basically the wedding. I think the way the most wedding contracts work, if I'm wrong, let me know. Everything gets paid when they show up at the wedding. That's how it works. As a photographer, I hate hearing stories like that. Really wish our industry had some sort of oversight because anyone off the street can buy a camera and claim to be a professional. Did you leave a review on Google? The OP said, no, he doesn't have a Google page or website. I mentioned him, this was the only way. I mentioned this to him, this was the only way to leave a review, which was to do this on one of the group videographer Facebook groups, which is where people go for work. So it's pretty damning, I have to admit. He's legit in his videography and editing. He just severely dropped the ball in the end. We have one more before the actual guy. Yeah. I understand how awful it may be these kind of situations, but I'm going to talk from my position as a filmmaker. I started to charge the anticipate in my project. I started to charge the anticipate in my project. I don't know how this person is saying words. In order to ensure them, after having a few bad experiences with some people, clients and film crews as well, that actually were not so professional and or trustable, I charged the initial 50% before the shoot, the next 50% at the end of the shoot day in those projects where I just have to do camera operating. I understand it is my duty to send the raw footage as soon as possible after the shooting day by using Google Drive, Dropbox, or in the last case, I'm having problems to upload them because so many GB gigabytes. We can meet in person somewhere in the city. I do that a lot because color grading requires gigantic files. And so, yeah, a lot of times I say, hey, you buy the hard drive, you give me the hard drive, I put it on the hard drive, I give it back to you. And I've had a lot of pushback by like, especially film school kids. I think it's because they just don't understand that you have to pay for the hard drives, where they'll be like, sure. And then they'll just never give me the hard drive. And I'll be like, great. I can't give you anything if you can't give me yeah. But usually I get the production drive. I get a production drive. And then that's the situation where I go, do you have a copy of this somewhere? Because I am not touching the only hard drive for your project. That's a liability. And usually they say, oh, it's on somebody's. And I say, take a picture of the hard drive with the computer open, showing the files, and hand me the other hard drive. Yeah. I know that's condescending, but when you're dealing with data, when data dies, everything goes away. So I have a no tolerance policy on single copies. Anyway, that's a rant. In the case of those projects where I also must edit, I charge the initial 25% before the shoot, the next 25 at the end of the shooting day. So he's staggering it. Then I charge the next 25% in order to initiate the editing, and the next 25 when the project is done and is ready to be delivered for the client. The delivery times may vary depending on the complexity of the project. Yep. How tight is the deadline? How many videos I have to do? I also consider in the equation that I also have other projects to deal with in parallel while doing my work for that client. Obviously, I understand I must prioritize each client, which I already received the edit. I used to do everything chronologically, and now it's purely on the level of pay. I used to be real legit about if I have multiple coloring projects, first come, first served, but You know, everybody has different deadlines and everybody has different levels of I need it now. And I figured out the most efficient and fair way to do it is if one project is paying me $200 and the other project is paying me $2,000 eats first. And if $200 has a problem with that, we can talk about changing the contract to make it a $2,000 project. It's as simple as that. Yeah. So, must prioritize projects in which I already received and to anticipate the start of the edit. 2 weeks should be prudent time to deliver 1 to 2 minute edit video, and 1 month should be okay for a 5-minute video. I'm not an editor anymore, so I don't know, or anymore. I'm not an editor, so I don't know any of these numbers, but sure, that's fine by me. If I was waiting back on a 5-minute video, a month makes sense to me. You know, that if they said they got it in the can in January, I would check in mid-February. I would check in late February, hopefully get it sometime in March for color purposes for me. That's, yeah. This guy continues, if I had more resources, I perfectly could hire an editor to help me with projects I have to deal with. No, I'm not one of the guys who hire young editors to put them to make high level work for low rates. Yeah, that's the, yeah, I agree. Good for them. As a videographer, I caution videographers to always take payment in advance. The only thing I don't get paid in advance is for the editing. If I'm being paid hourly for it, I don't have a good estimate on time. That's fair. I don't usually do that unless I know the project's going to take infinite hours. I don't usually go hourly, but sounds like they may have been editing mostly your jobs, and maybe now they have other projects to do that have changed the timeline. It's very rare someone delivers every time and then all of a sudden just stops, but it's definitely possible. Yeah, I agree. And then we have the guy, and I wrote on this the guy because it's the guy. So they've mentioned his name in this post like 8 or 9 times now. This guy checked in because, hey, guess what? He's on this. Sorry you feel this way, man. There has been a day I haven't responded, but I did text you back, so don't make it seem like you haven't heard from me. Let's be real, I had 36 shoots in January. Jesus. And this video is literally shoot number 34 after going through all my work from last month. I didn't push for you to pay the ending cost up front. Cool. So the guy paid him out of contract, basically. You decided to send that over together once I had already edited 9 of your videos, for which with no deposit on that. Granted, you did put a deposit on the filming aspect. Oh, so the contract's a little confusing, I'd say, because I would have expected he get a deposit for the editing, but that's fine. On top of the countless revisions on each video, when in reality it should only be 1. That's why I'm not an editor, because revisions, especially when the contract says you have 1 round of revisions, and the way my contracts for color grading are worked out, it's usually I give you 2 rounds of revisions. So you have an initial conversation revisions, and then you have final touch-up revisions. And if you want more, we open another contract, because I'm not just going to add little revisions in willy-nilly because you changed your mind or somebody changed your mind. So my contract says if we go past the agreed upon revisions, we need to form a new contract. That's because in the past, my contract had said if we go past new revisions, we just need to update the contract. And that's when the fight happens, because you don't want to pay more, but I have to do more work, even though we went through revisions. We went through this round and you said, okay, I want this. And when we went through this round, you said, okay, I want this. And you weren't satisfied after 2. If you're not satisfied after 2, you tend to be the kind of client that I don't want to work with, because 1 gets you in the ballpark, 2 is just final finishing touches. And if you've changed your mind somewhere in the process, we're all screwed anyway. So anyway, countless revisions on each video when in reality it should be 1. Yeah. This guy, I can feel it in the writing that he's regretting how he wrote his contract, because infinite revisions for an edit is infinite, and it sucks. It's insane. Let's see, here we go. That being said, I should finish out the edits that come before you being that they were filmed before you, so he's doing chronologically. Even after you call me out, I still may consider it because I'm a nice guy. I gave you a mad discount on the whole project on top of agreeing to sleep in a hotel room when realistically I should have gotten my own room for 10 days. Yeah, that's, hey, if you're gonna sling mud, bro. You're gonna get mud slinged back at you. So this guy had to live with you for 10 days and you're on Facebook talking shit about him. That's interesting. You've paid me an incredibly discounted rate and are asking for outstanding turnarounds that shouldn't even be considered on my contract. My nose is running. It says up to a month for deliverables, and you didn't want to sign it because it was too much to read. You sent me your contract, and it just says all raw footage with no timeline to deliver. Oh, so the contract was never signed, and maybe this guy signed just a generic contract from the client. That was a mistake. I think this is the moment where I would say the videographer made a huge mistake by not making them sign his contract. I don't do business that way. If you're not going to sign my contract, I'm not going to do your work. And I've had several in recent memory where I send the contract over, we agree on it, I sign it, just waiting for you to sign it, never hear back, and then they go, hey, here's the footage, and I go, I'm sorry, I'm not touching your footage. You don't sign the contract, I don't touch your footage. And they go, well, we need this by, and I was like, great, sign the contract, pay me. I'm not gonna touch your expensive stuff if it's gonna get me in trouble. It's as simple as that. So he should have made them sign the contract. And raw footage with no delivery time is scary, and it's amateur-y, and it's scary. And by the way, it's different. It's different for color grading, because color grading, there's no such thing as raw footage. I mean, the raw footage is what I receive to color. So, but the equivalent is like my color grading choices in DaVinci Resolve. And a few times people have asked for that information, and I say in my contract very clearly, that's my proprietary choices. You don't get that. I can do something in the fashion of, if you want to take another clip and have it color graded the same way, but I'm not going to send you over my timeline on my color grading, because then you have me, then you have my stuff, and that's not okay. Because if you copy it, then you can continue to copy it, and all of a sudden I'm out of work for no fucking reason. So no, you don't get my raw editing choices in the color grade. And if you want them, I can show you how to do it, and you can do it yourself. And I will charge for the classes. So again, I'm sorry you feel entitled to your ways, but being one of the last shoots of the month doesn't mean you get deliverables before any other shoots unless you are paying a premium. And the final thing written, somebody commented on that. Undoubtedly, there's always two sides to a story. So, recap. Filmmaker has a project, hires a videographer for 10 days road trip, where the videographer stayed in the hotel room with them and gave them a crazy discount. The videographer gave them a contract that the production did not want to sign, and instead the production sent back a generic, non-specific, contract that the videographer signed, which I think was a mistake on the videographer's part. The videographer then turned in most of the edits way ahead of schedule, of which there was no schedule. And when the videographer stopped sending edits, the client got upset and tried to basically burn them on a Facebook group that is used for videographers to find work. But as was revealed by a lot of people jumping in, with a couple specific exceptions, everybody was saying, what does the contract say? We're talking about Dr. Laura Schlesinger here. We're talking about Tom Martino, if you're from Denver. What does the contract say? you know. And then finally, the guy jumps in, the actual videographer jumps in and says, he said some stuff I don't think he needed to say, which was basically, you guys, I gave you guys a sweet discount for shit work, and I had to share a room with you guys, even though you should have put me up, which I kind of agree with. If it's multiple days of a road documentary, the putting somebody up is kind of. I've been in situations where the client has said something to the effect of, "You get the hotel room, and we'll reimburse you." And a couple times I've done it, and they've reimbursed me, and a couple times I'm like, oh, I'm just getting a hotel room, and they're never gonna honor the $100 a night I spent on a Fleabag motel. So anyway, you got to be careful. Anyway, so this guy goes, you know, I'm sorry. He basically said, "I'm sorry you feel that way," but I kind of agree with the videographer here. They they seem to fundamentally not understand the process, so much so that they didn't even want to sign the contract that this working professional videographer gave them, and instead gave him back like a bullshit contract that he shouldn't have signed because it was too generic and didn't have dates on it. Contracts. That's the takeaway. The contracts is the takeaway. Uh, a reason why I don't edit, and that I have a crazy complicated multi-page, like I think it's like 8 or 9 pages long contract just for any color grading work, even if it's free, even if it's for, students. It's the same contract. It just, where it says the money, it just says $0, because this kind of shit, you know, it's mostly lower end, low below standard rate clients that are not experienced in this, and they're not experienced how this stuff kind of goes. And if you don't do it all the time, you don't understand that making movies, making videos, video production, shooting it takes a huge amount of time, a huge amount of coordination, and a huge amount of money. Editing it takes a huge amount of time, a huge amount of coordination, and a huge amount of money if you're going to pay the editor what they're actually, supposed to be getting paid. It is what it is. If you're making a video, it's basically advertising media. Like, you got to treat it like advertising media. If you're going to go on Facebook and pay Facebook to push out your company, and Facebook has specific published rates, video production is the same thing. You gotta understand that it's expensive for a reason. It's the same logic as, like, I took my truck into the mechanic and I told him I needed brakes, but I don't want him to touch anything else. And he told me I needed a new engine. And then a couple days later, my engine exploded. But what did the mechanic do? Like, you don't want that kind of customer. As a videographer, as a filmmaker, you don't want to work with that kind of customer, because you might as well just push the truck back out and say, "I'm not doing your brakes. Like, your truck is too dangerous. Your project is too scary. Like, you refuse to sign my contract." That's the end of the working relationship for me. I have a never list with people on that for that reason. You refuse to pay me, especially in my contract. That's not the end of the conversation, because it's probably going to be a small claims court situation, because I have a contract that's enforceable. My contract says what county we have to do it in, and that there's mediation, so it's not going to cost us a crazy amount to go to small claims court like it would normally. You don't necessarily need a lawyer. Anyway, contracts. Yes, there's shitty people who will try to scam you as a service, as a videography service, and there's shitty people that try to scam videographers. I feel like it's more that way, because it's just easier to get away with. I feel like contracts, enforceable contracts. And again, I really try to sniff out, especially when I'm doing color grading, what kind of project I'm working with. And if they're allergic to paperwork, and or they do a lot of handshake promises, but then they're really irritating, or they're really pushy, or they don't deliver on their side of the stuff, I get out. I get out, and I try to get out as painlessly as possible. And I usually don't say, "You suck, I'm out of here." I usually say, I'm probably not the filmmaker for you. I'm probably not the colorist for you. You need to go find somebody who's," and if they continue to argue, that's when you block them. Because it doesn't get better. And this is to say, you get a lot of those, especially at the low budgets, but then you end up in a situation where you pitch a project to somebody, and they go, "Why are you asking $5,000? This is a $25,000 project." And you go, "Thank you, great." And there's never problems in the process, and they pay you on time, and they're grateful for your work and all that kind of stuff. And you go, "Okay, you just got to get up to that level, you know." If you can get out of the gook and get up to the advertising companies, the public facing, like sales companies, anybody who's used to video production, unless they're, like high pressure sales where every penny counts, they're not going to nickel and dime you as a filmmaker. They're going to appreciate your work, and they're going to understand that their $25,000 video project is going to net them $100,000 in sales. They understand how the workflow works. But you end up with these little tiny projects where it's paper clips and bubble gum, and you're giving them a favor. This is going to be a big thing for all of us. Credit, all that. I can't pay you right now. It's like, I'm sorry, I can't help you. I can't live my life this way. I'm sorry. Best of luck to you. So anyway, that's a long-winded way of saying this was a whirlwind. This was fascinating. Kind of sucked. I feel bad for the videographer, but I think other than the fact that he did do a couple jabs in his response that were a little less than professional, I'm on the side of the videographer here, and it seems like the client was just messy and unprofessional, and ironically, the internet called him out on it. So that's what it is. What do you guys think? Like, share, subscribe. Catch you next time.